Oh, I remember now. These ceramics were indeed made by the original owner. Back in college, Clara worked part-time in a DIY pottery shop, and James, eager to woo her, would often visit, spending entire afternoons there. He lacked the talent and patience for it. His mind and eyes were always fixed on Clara, leading him to end up dirty all over and always left with an ugly masterpiece in hand. He didn't mind it at all and didn't feel embarrassed in the slightest. Finally, Clara couldn't bear it anymore. She told him he was doing everything wrong. That gave James the chance to seize the opportunity and become indomitable. Well then, why don't you teach me yourself? Of course, Clara wasn't eager to do so, but James was a high-profile and generous VIP customer of the shop. She couldn't afford to offend him. It wasn't until Clara quit her job that James finally stopped. All those boxes full of artworks were the results of those times. It's nothing important, just throw it away, I said casually. Wait a moment. Clara suddenly spoke. You moved? Whether to say it or not, this woman's IQ is occasionally online. I nodded. Yes. Clara frowned. Where did you move to? How come it's so sudden? I couldn't help but laugh. Miss Daniel, CEO Daniel, how many times do I need to remind you that we are already divorced? What I do and where I live have nothing to do with you anymore. She chokes as if hearing something she cannot accept. Her eyes start to redden faintly. After quite a while, she finally gives in and whispers, Those ceramics, if you don't want them, I'll have someone pick them up. I looked at her puzzledly. Those have always been mine. I can keep or discard them if I want to. I don't know how this sentence struck a nerve in her. The last glimmer in her eyes suddenly vanished. Like a feeble flame in the wind, it's finally extinguished. Mikkel hurriedly walked over with a worried look. Clara, are you okay? Clara slightly turned her head to avoid his hand. Mikkel froze on the spot, quite embarrassed. But I have no interest in this drama, so I turn around and leave. To my surprise, as soon as I stepped outside, I was stopped by a doctor face to face. Eh? Looking up, I saw a female doctor in her 40s studying me intently. Why are you here? Are you feeling unwell? Confusion flooded me. Then I saw the tag on her chest, Chief Gynecologist. A speculation crossed my mind. The only way that James would have any kind of interaction with this woman must be related to that child. Thank you for your concern, but there's nothing wrong with me. I'm here to visit a friend today, I answered vaguely. She seemed to heave a sigh of relief. That's good. However, both of you are at the right age already. Next time, if you have another child, you can't abandon it. I was immediately dumbstruck. The amount of information contained in these brief phrases was too great. Child. Child. Wasn't Clara's miscarriage accidental? What did the doctor mean by? I got it. That night when James rushed to the hospital, Clara had already been wheeled out of the operating room, and Michael was right by her bedside. Clara, what are you doing? Just as I was dazed, a startled exclamation from Michael came from behind me. I turned around, only to see Clara remove her needle, forcefully push Michael away, and strode over. She rushed directly to me, blocking the female doctor. Her voice was more strained than ever before. Doctor, this is a matter between husband and wife, and it's none of your business. But my body was chilling. I turned my stiff neck to look at Clara, and for the first time felt this beautiful face strangely unfamiliar. Clara, what does this mean? The doctor's brows gradually furrowed. You don't know? Your wife told me that you two are currently focusing on your careers, and you've temporarily decided not to have a child. She decided to have an abortion, and you were completely unaware of this? I can't quite recall how I made it home. Simply because I was left in stupefied shock by the abrupt news. I was seated in my study for a good while before I closed my eyes. How could this happen? In the book, it was written that the cause of Clara's miscarriage was a big quarrel she had with James, driven by his jealousy and suspicious mind. How could it be? For some reason, thinking about this, from somewhere within me came a sensation of pain, as if resonating with the event. It was as if I could actually feel the despair and agony he must have experienced when he found out about the loss of the child. This was making me feel increasingly uneasy. I shook my head, trying to snap out of these feelings. The housekeeper had recently cleaned the study. I rummaged through some things and found the box where I kept my university memorabilia. At the bottom, I found a memento album from my college days. The miscarriage incident diverged from the events in the story, so was it possible there were discrepancies elsewhere too? Opening to the first page, there was a photo from training camp. The sunlight was intense, and a youthful boy in a military green uniform had a radiant smile. On the platform behind him stood a slender, graceful figure. Although it was a bit far, anyone with a keen eye could tell at a glance that it was Clara from our university days. Below the photo was a line in small characters. On the first day of training camp, a girl collapsed from heat stroke next to me. I had to carry her to the medical room, and she was so light. I didn't expect to see her giving a speech on behalf of the freshmen during the performance today. So, it turns out her name is Clara. Under the pretext of taking a selfie, he secretly photographed the one he liked. It's nothing out of the ordinary. Was this when he first fell for Clara? I can't help but chuckle. James fell for Clara in such a cliched, love-at-first-sight way. I involuntarily touched my face. The James in the book was so selfish, stubborn, extreme. It hardly matches this version of him, beaming with such a bright smile. It's hard to imagine that this starry-eyed boy would eventually become such a paranoid, domineering, and self-centered man. I continue to flip through the pages and find that every single photo is somehow connected to Clara. There is her taking classes in the large lecture hall, swinging her racket and whipping her hair back and forth on the badminton court, having meals alone in the cafeteria, her working meticulously in the pottery shop. Occasionally, there are some brief comments next to these photos. The courses she chooses are so boring. I don't understand them. How can a girl be both good at studies and playing sports? She always seems to be eating alone, and she always gets the cheapest food in the cafeteria. Is she getting enough to eat? She always seems to be busy, not even having time to chat with me. To my surprise, this appears to be a scrapbook of James's secret crush on Clara. Throughout the 4 years of university, he took many photos of her. Each photo and each comment seemed drastically different from the James depicted in the book. It seems like she is in love with someone else, and that person is not me. What can I do? Should I just give up? Tomorrow is the graduation ceremony. Maybe I should confess my feelings to her and say goodbye to this unrequited love. When we were halfway through taking the graduation photos, she suddenly left. I secretly followed her and found out that her mother's condition had worsened and she needed a lot of money. What can she do? The page that was supposed to be filled with graduation shots is left blank. In pursuit of Clara, James missed his own graduation photo shoot. My hand started to tremble slightly. For some reason, this book felt so heavy, as though it was weighing me down, making it hard for me to keep flipping. It felt like if I continued to read, something uncontrollable would happen. There was a stone pressing on my chest, making it difficult to breathe in or breathe out. Driven by some force, I continued to turn the pages. There on the next page, a wedding photo. No, to be precise, it's a document photo. A picture on a marriage certificate. James still has a smiling face, although it seemed much subtler than it was initially, with the corners of his mouth slightly raised, leaning slightly towards Clara. However, Clara's face was calm, completely out of place with this elegant white backdrop. That's when I remembered, they don't seem to have wedding photos. After a year of constant indecision, Clara finally chose to marry James. She didn't marry the man she loved the most, so naturally, she was not interested in these tedious matters. Moreover, with her mother being in the hospital all the time, they didn't host a wedding ceremony or take wedding photos. They merely picked up a certificate and deemed themselves married. I expected that on this page, the day when James finally got together with Clara, he would write a lot of words. But contrary to my expectations, there wasn't a single word on this page. I stared at that photo for a while, feeling a strange sense of constriction in my heart. Having been in a secret adoration for 5 years, then married for 5 years, and they only had this solitary joint photograph. I suppressed my thoughts and continued flipping through, only to find out there were no more photos of Clara. Just a few occasional sentences. She seems to be very busy lately. The company is just getting started, and she has to personally manage everything. It's so hard. I made her favorite steak, but she returned from a social engagement reeking of alcohol and fell asleep as soon as she hit the bed. She bought an apartment near the office, claiming it's for the convenience of commuting. But why is that man also there? I know I can't compare to him in her heart, but I still want a child that belongs to both of us. Am I hopeless? I went to the nursing home today and coincidentally bumped into Tracy, who was accompanying her grandfather to be discharged. She said I'm brainless. Tactics like this have no use against women like Clara. I left immediately because I knew she was telling the truth. I was about to give up, but then she came back at night, very drunk, probably from a difficult social engagement. I couldn't resist kissing her, and for the first time, she kissed back. There was a blank space in the middle, until on a certain page, it seems like, is she pregnant? I kept reading. Those 2 months indeed were the best time for James and Clara, even though he knew Clara's change was only due to the child, but he had nothing else to ask for. Since many, many years ago, he helplessly fell in love with this woman. He once thought this was his light in life. He wanted to draw warmth and favor from her, but it was wrong from the start. All these seemingly beautiful illusions were relentlessly shattered in the end. The last page was a torn consent form for abortion surgery. At the bottom right corner was Clara's signature. It felt like a sudden bolt of lightning had struck me, the piercing pain rushing through me, leaving my entire body numb, my limbs icy cold. Countless memories flashed back in my mind, surging wildly as though they wanted to consume me. I felt like a dying fish just before a heavy rainstorm, desperately wanting to break the water's surface to breathe, but constantly being swept away by even greater waves. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. I finally remembered I hadn't transcended into a book. I am James. The sudden ringing of the mobile phone was particularly harsh in the quiet study room. Snapping back to reality, I found the call was unexpectedly from Tracy. I accepted the call. Before I could say anything, Tracy frankly asked, "Have you visited Clara in the hospital today?" She took an afternoon flight for a business trip, so she shouldn't have known about my situation. Although I had made such a comment on my friend circle, it seemed she should not know the details, even though the timing was clear. Yes, I did not deny. How did you know? She hesitated for a moment. Clara called me and asked about something related to you. Oh, I see. I nodded, but did not continue to inquire. Listening to my bland tone, Tracy seemed to sense that something was not right. So late, and you haven't slept yet? She eased her tone and changed the topic. As I was about to speak, I heard the doorbell ring. The one who arrived was unexpectedly Clara. I hung up on Tracy's call and went downstairs to open the door, but I didn't let Clara in. The outside had already turned pitch black. The street lamp behind her cast a faint light, making her face half bright and half shaded. "What's up?" I asked. Her lips were pale. I wanted to apologize to you. It's been 3 hours since I left the hospital, and she only thought to say these words now. No need, I responded calmly. It's all in the past. It's too late. I no longer need this apology. The color of Clara's face drained even more. James, let me explain. I can't explain. It was just a moment of impulse that day. Was it an impulse or was it premeditated? I retort softly. Carrying my child must have been hard for you, hasn't it? Clara stiffened. After a long while, she closed her eyes and said word by word, "At first, I didn't want this child. But later, as the baby was growing every day, I was just confused at the time. I regret it too." Do you not think it's too late to regret it now? A remorseful look appeared in Clara's eyes, her shoulders trembling as she was rendered speechless. A faint smile played at the corners of my lips. You thought, because of me, you had a miscarriage, didn't you? If that were the case, I would have hated myself. I would have no other choice than to let you be and never bring up the child again, right? Clara was suddenly taken aback. In her subconscious mind, she saw me as this selfish, obsessive, and bitter man. Without the child, I would have no reason to tie her down, to cling on to her. She opened her mouth, and every word seemed to come out with difficulty. But this is between us, you. Why did you suddenly fight with Michael that day? I silently looked at her. This woman has been the one I loved for 10 years. But at this moment, the one she's still thinking of, it's still another man. I laughed bitterly. No reason. I just don't like him. He deserved it. But now the child is gone, we are divorced. Clara, you can finally be with him. You should be happy. No. Clara seemed to be suddenly stimulated, stepped forward, and grabbed my wrist. I don't love him. I don't. James, could you not speak to me like that? I furrowed my brow, getting ready to push her away, when suddenly a soft chuckle came from behind us. Oh, seems like I arrived at the wrong time. Clara suddenly froze in place. It was only then that I saw that the person who had arrived was Tracy, who should have been away on a business trip. She brushed her scattered hair from her ears, her beautiful eyes filled with coldness. Clara, haven't I told you? You said you wanted a divorce, and you got it. Then stop pestering him. Clara bit her lip. Her gaze towards Tracy was also full of hostility. When did it become your business to meddle in James and my matters? She retorted. Tracy raised her thin eyebrows, walked over in her stilettos, and stood beside me, hooking my arm. My heart skipped a beat. Trace! She tilted her head to look at me, her smile alluring yet innocent. So are you having second thoughts? She questioned. My mind was in a whirl. I shook my head. No plans for that, but what about you? Why did you come back so abruptly?